Hello Buckfighters, there's a windstorm and the electric keeps going out, so hopefully this video will be able to be recorded and uploaded, because of course when the electric goes out, the internet goes out. But if this video goes up on Sunday, that's why. I had a video for this week planned since I started reading The Fault in Our Stars a month ago. All the stuff that I wanted to talk about once I actually could talk about The Fault in Our Stars with spoilers. And then Daniel, of course, being Daniel, disagrees with everyone, so now I feel compelled to address the things that he brought up in his video. But I also kind of want to try and get into some of the stuff that I had originally planned, so this video might be kind of long. Actually, I'm re-recording this because the video that I recorded the first time, even when I edited out all of it was almost 20 minutes, and that's too long. So Katie noticed the same thing that I did, which is that Dan dislikes The Fault in Our Stars, and Looking for Alaska is his favorite John Green book. Whereas prior to The Fault in Our Stars, Paper Towns was my favorite John Green book. Looking for Alaska was my least favorite. Of course, Lauren goes and throws all of this off. But I still think that there may be something to that, because, to me at least, The Fault in Our Stars seemed to almost pick up where Paper Towns left off thematically. I felt when I first read Looking for Alaska, I read Paper Towns first, that they're pretty much opposites, and John Green has also said this. I will put a link to that down there. So I feel like maybe that might have something to do with it. Now, Dan, you mentioned that while you were reading The Fault in Our Stars, you kept wishing you were reading An Imperial Infliction instead. And I obviously can't say this for certain because I'm not you, and I'm not actually all-knowing, apparently, I've been told. But I feel like that right there may be the problem, or part of the problem. Because I feel like the Imperial Infliction cannot possibly exist. Like, it's set up to be pretty much the perfect book. Now, this is the perfect book through Hazel's eyes. She calls it the platonic ideal, or her platonic ideal of books. Which, I would argue that there cannot be a platonic ideal of books for, obviously, universally, but I don't think that there really could be even a platonic ideal of books for one individual, because books are so different from each other. Not even just different books, like these are very different books, but even the same book read by different people is really different books, because a book changes, I think, every time someone new reads it. And I also think that a book changes every time someone rereads the book. Not even just different books, like these are very different books, but even the same book read by different people is really different books, because a book changes, I think, every time someone new reads it. And I also think that a book changes every time someone rereads the book. The way an Imperial Infliction is set up, and the way it needs to be set up for so many of the things in The Fault in Our Stars to work, it has to be pretty much the perfect book, which can't exist in reality. And if somehow we could get a hold of an Imperial Infliction and read it, it would not be as good as it is set up to be in The Fault in Our Stars. Because we're seeing it entirely from Hazel's point of view, and also Augustus's point of view. But there are definitely things that could influence Augustus to be more inclined to like it than to dislike it. One of which I think Hazel is herself a factor in that, much like I think Augustus is a pretty major factor in why Hazel likes The Prince of Dawn. But that aside, no book could be as good as an Imperial Infliction is set up to be. We only actually see just a few quotes from Imperial Infliction, and it's really not that difficult to write really, really, really good quotes from a book. It is much, much harder to write a book that is that good. It's kind of like The Crystal World having the really amazing quote on the back and then the rest of it sucked. Not that I think that Imperial Infliction, if we could get a hold of it, would be that terrible, but I don't think it would be as good as we think it would be. Except I don't think it would be. So, but yes. So really, I don't think it's fair to compare The Fault in Our Stars to an Imperial Infliction, because the Imperial Infliction isn't real, and it's not really a genuine, plausible standard. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, The Fault in Our Stars, I think I said in my last video, for me wasn't necessarily so much about the plot or the characters, though I did really, really enjoy the characters. It was about what the characters concluded about life and the world and what the book was saying. In as much as that seems like it would be a really unsubtle things, the things that I like the most about it, I think are done in an incredibly subtle way. I definitely think that it uses cancer more as a premise than as an actual, this is the subject matter. But while I don't think it's actually about any illness, I would say if it were to be about any illness, it would be more about depression than it is about cancer. I don't know, maybe this is just me being able to notice this. But it's really one of the best portrayals of depression, particularly in a young adult book, that I've ever read, because it is so incredibly subtle. I mean, yeah, okay, it's stated right out. Hazel says in a really sarcastic kind of way that her mother decides she's depressed because of all of these generally considered to be pretty clear signs of depression. But the things that to me indicate more that Hazel is depressed are things that are far subtler than that. For instance, my absolute favorite part of the entire book is when Hazel compares herself to a grenade, and then the way that that whole theme is carried out throughout the book. In much the same way that I think we're not seeing an Imperial Infliction accurately, and Hazel definitely doesn't see Peter Van Houten accurately. Like I said, the themes that were begun in Paper Towns, that we don't see other people accurately. But it takes it further than that, because in The Fault in Our Stars, Hazel doesn't actually see herself accurately. She sees herself as a grenade, that she's just a curse to anyone who loves her, and it's just better if no one loves her because she will only hurt them in the end, which isn't actually an accurate view of either herself or Augustus or anyone else who does love her. And that basically the way that we idealize things isn't usually accurate, but at the same time seeing something entirely negatively is generally not accurate either. Because there are, I think, a lot of parallels that you can make between cancer and depression in the way that they affect people. Yet they are perceived as pretty much polar opposites in the way that people with cancer and the way that people with depression are treated by society and the way that they're perceived by society. Like the way Hazel says right out in the book, the way that people will lift cancer patients, particularly if they're children, up on this great pedestal, if they're these great heroes and fighters, and it's this wonderful view of them, but it's not actually accurate, so it's not really actually helpful. And then on the other end, you have, this is not mentioned explicitly in the book, but I think it's still there, that people tend to view people with depression as weak and lesser because of this illness that they have, and, well, you should just be over it. And that's not an accurate view either. Just like Peter Van Houten can't be the perfect, ideal hero that Hazel wants him to be, but at the same time, I don't think he's completely horrible. In the end, we see that he has reasons for being the way that he is, and yes, he isn't perfect, and yeah, he's kind of not a great person, but I don't think that that means he's completely horrible either. And Hazel describing herself as a grenade, and then the way that that whole thing was carried out was probably my absolute favorite part of the book, especially when I initially read it, and I think it probably still is. Like, from the instant that I read the part where she first describes herself in such a way, is just, yeah. And the way that it's carried out isn't actually the way that it would happen in reality, and it's very much a wish fulfillment type thing, which I think a lot of this book is about wish fulfillment and how that can't always happen. But I don't have time to get into that in this video, so Dan, I will see you on Monday.